Hey everyone! Welcome back to Story Hive. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss an update. Let's jump into today's story. After I was caught cheating with a school friend, my husband is now demanding a DNA test and filing for divorce. My husband and I are both in our late 40s and have been married for more than 24 years. We have 3 children. To protect our privacy, I won't go into too much detail about us, just enough to explain the situation. For the first 16 years, we had a wonderful marriage. It was during that time that a brief, poorly thought out affair from my past with an old boyfriend was revealed to my husband by the ex-wife of that old boyfriend. Let me try to explain things as best I can. About 7 years into my marriage, I attended my 15-year high school reunion, and my husband joined me. I was part of the alumni committee and returned home 6 days before the event. My daughters accompanied me, and my husband flew in to join us the night before the main event. He and I attended the reunion, and we all stayed with my parents. However, when I was without my husband, I reconnected with my first serious boyfriend, whom I'll refer to as Reed. Reed and I had inappropriate contact multiple times that week. At the time, Reed was also married with 2 children of his own. He claimed that his marriage was falling apart and that he was unhappy. In contrast, my marriage was loving and fulfilling. Reflecting back, I believe I did it to recapture some of the excitement from my youth. The years of being a mother and a homemaker in a secure marriage made me long for excitement and risk-taking. I despise myself for this. During those 3 days we spent together, we behaved as we did back in high school. We ended things 2 days before the reunion, realizing what a huge mistake we had made. We swore to have no further contact and to go on with our lives as if it hadn't happened. The reunion went well, and I even introduced my husband to my old boyfriend and his wife. We all chatted for a while, and with those 2 men standing side by side, I couldn't believe I had cheated on my husband, who was the love of my life and my support. I felt incredibly guilty and terrible right then and there. I promised myself that I would never tell him because it would deeply hurt him, but I would make it up to him. For the next 9 years, our marriage was nearly as perfect as one could imagine. During that period, I felt a strong urge to do everything in my power to make him happy, and I did exactly that. I gave him my all and ensured there was some form of affection from me every day. I managed everything at home and took care of the children so that when he returned from work, the guilt I carried was, and still is, incredibly profound. However, I also found immense joy in being a devoted wife and mother to our children. In this time we had 3 kids, as I gave birth to a boy 8 years ago. My husband was overjoyed to have a son, and they formed a close bond from the day he was born. To be fair, my husband is an affectionate father and shows the same level of love for our daughters. Everything was going well for us until one day my husband arrived home from work early and said we needed to talk. I was concerned and thought something had gone wrong at his job. Instead, he told me he had spoken to my old boyfriend's ex-wife earlier that day. As soon as he mentioned their names, my heart started racing. I had difficulty breathing and felt lightheaded. He proceeded to explain that she had told him her husband confessed to an affair he and I had years ago. She mentioned that her husband had been diagnosed with an aggressive form of Parkinson's disease 6 years ago and was now in an advanced stage. They had been divorced for 7 years, which I also didn't know, but she and her children still helped him with some tasks as his condition had worsened. Apparently he was consumed by guilt, and he finally confessed. She's remarried now, but continued to assist him with his groceries and some basic errands as he didn't have anyone else to help him. To her the affair was no longer significant, but she felt a moral obligation to inform my husband, believing he should be aware. I agree with her, but I wish she had contacted me first so I could have confessed instead of catching my husband and me off guard. I begged my husband for forgiveness, explaining that it was a long time ago and had no real impact on our relationship. I reminded him of our wonderful marriage and assured him that he and our children remained my top priority. Naturally, he was upset, hurt, and felt deeply disrespected. He became extremely angry, which was something I had never witnessed before. For the next hour he used offensive language, including disrespectful terms, to address me. I sat there crying, not uttering a word, as I believed every word he was saying. He had been nothing but a wonderful man to me and my entire family. Once he finished his outburst, he left in his truck without specifying his destination. An hour later he called and told me he'd return in the evening. He instructed me to gather all the kids for a family meeting and to think about what I would tell them. I inquired about what he meant and pleaded with him not to make me do this, as we didn't want to burden our children. I expressed that I should be the only one suffering for this, but he insisted that they needed to know the truth about their mother. He told me not to say a word to them until he got home in the evening. I prepared dinner for the kids, but I couldn't eat much due to my nervousness. They asked where their dad was, and I informed them he'd return later as he was working. I then mentioned that he wanted to have a family meeting that night to discuss something. They inquired about why and at what time, and I told them to be ready at 8:30. I texted my husband to inform him that we were all set for 8:30 and also asked him to call me so we could go over what we were going to say. However, he didn't call. Instead, he arrived promptly at 8:30 and entered the kitchen where we were all seated. His demeanor was notably different. He was no longer angry. Instead, he was cheerful, giving each of our kids a kiss and a hug as usual. He sat down, looked at me, and asked if I wanted to start. I attempted to speak but couldn't. Tearfully, I said I couldn't do it. He then proceeded to explain to the kids in simple terms what I had done. My daughters began to cry and express anger, while my 8-year-old son looked bewildered and frightened. My daughters asked when this had all happened, and I told them it occurred years ago, and I couldn't recall the exact year. My son, with a fearful expression and tears in his eyes, asked his dad if he was going to leave us. Hearing this, I began to sob, uncertain about what my husband would say. Thankfully, he assured our son that he wasn't leaving, but mentioned that he would be sleeping in the spare twin bed in his room for a while. He asked our son if that was okay, and our son eagerly replied, "Sure, Dad." My husband explained to the kids that things were going to be challenging for a while, and he wanted them to understand that things between us might not be quite the same for some time, if ever. He assured them that things in their world would remain unchanged and advised them to bring up any discomfort to us so we could address it promptly. Our marriage was never the same after that day, and it took nearly 13 months before we began to regain some sense of being husband and wife. It wasn't full intimacy, but he gradually allowed some forms of physical contact. This continued for the next 3 months, but only when he was in the mood. He wouldn't initiate anything with me, but I would push things as far as he permitted daily. Eventually, we did start sharing love again, but he couldn't do it while looking at me, and the tenderness wasn't the same as before. He explained that when he saw my face, he imagined my old boyfriend, which immediately killed his excitement. I didn't quite understand this, but my therapist mentioned that it's not uncommon. She said that for some men, this is a way to regain their masculinity that was compromised by the affair. While it might seem selfish and one-sided on his part, nonetheless, I wish we could return to the way things used to be. My husband was so giving before and always made sure I was satisfied. Now he doesn't seem to care about my feelings, and I think he just uses me as a way to release his desires. He's told me that he won't do things for me like I do for him, if you catch my drift. To him, I somehow feel permanently tainted in that aspect. It's bizarre, I know, but that's how things have been for the last 3 years. I've grown accustomed to it, and accepted it as our new normal. All things considered, everything was going pretty well between us until this past January. During this time, something that should have been an enjoyable exercise turned into something that set us back months in our healing process. The wounds from the past affair were reopened, and we found ourselves even further behind than we had been. The wounds from the past affair were reopened, and we found ourselves even further behind than we had been. It became clear that the trust, which had been painstakingly rebuilt over the years, was once again fractured. The private investigator's intrusion had not only caused emotional turmoil, but also triggered a renewed sense of betrayal. My husband's actions, meant to protect himself from future hurt, ended up driving a deeper wedge between us. It was as if the pain of the past was being dredged up again, making it harder to move forward. Despite my attempts to reassure him and demonstrate my commitment, the lingering doubts and suspicions seemed insurmountable. As we struggled to mend our relationship, we decided to seek counseling together, hoping that a neutral space would help us delve into the root causes of our problems and guide us towards reconciliation. Every session felt like a step towards understanding, but progress was slow and often painful. The ultimate challenge was to rebuild our connection while confronting the shadows of past mistakes. Each day, we worked to show that we were committed to healing and moving forward, but the journey was far from easy. The counseling sessions were intense and emotional. We revisited old wounds and faced uncomfortable truths about ourselves and each other. It became clear that our issues went beyond the affair. There were deep-seated patterns and unresolved conflicts that had been festering for years. Each revelation was a reminder of how far we had drifted from the connection we once had. Through the process, we learned the importance of open communication and vulnerability. We began to share our fears, insecurities, and desires more honestly. It was difficult to shed old habits and rebuild trust, but the effort was necessary for any hope of repairing our relationship. We committed to small, consistent actions to demonstrate our dedication to change, from regular check-ins about our feelings to creating new shared experiences that help rekindle our bond. Despite our best efforts, there were moments of doubt and frustration. It sometimes felt like we were taking 2 steps forward and 1 step back. Yet, each challenge also offered an opportunity to strengthen our relationship. We celebrated the small victories and learned to support each other through setbacks. Ultimately, the journey was about more than just repairing our relationship. It was about personal growth and understanding. We each had to confront our own shortcomings and work on becoming better partners. It was a long and arduous process, but through it all we discovered a renewed appreciation for each other and a deeper commitment to making our relationship work. As time passed, we began to see the fruits of our labor. Trust, while still fragile, was gradually being rebuilt. We found new ways to connect and support each other, and our relationship started to feel more resilient and authentic. It was clear that we had a long road ahead, but we faced it with a renewed sense of hope and determination, knowing that our efforts were making a difference. Despite our progress, there were moments when the shadows of our past still loomed large. We found ourselves occasionally slipping back into old patterns, and it became clear that healing was not a linear process. Patience and persistence became our closest allies. We learned to recognize triggers and address them with empathy rather than defensiveness. Gradually, the commitment to our growth started to pay off. We grew more adept at handling conflicts without letting them escalate, and our conversations became more constructive. We also made an effort to celebrate our achievements, no matter how small, which helped us stay motivated and connected. Building new traditions and creating positive experiences together allowed us to build fresh. We started to genuinely enjoy each other's company again and rediscovered the joy in our relationship. Ultimately, the process of healing was about learning to appreciate each other anew and understanding that our relationship, while tested, could be more profound and resilient than before. We embraced the journey as an opportunity for growth and remained committed to nurturing the bond we had worked so hard to repair. With time, we both came to see our relationship as a testament to our resilience and dedication. We acknowledged that the challenges we faced had paradoxically strengthened our connection. By continuing to communicate openly and honestly, we found new ways to support and uplift each other. Our shared experiences, both the trials and triumphs, became the foundation for a deeper, more meaningful partnership. We learned to value the small victories and to be grateful for the journey we had undertaken together. It was through this shared effort and understanding that we truly began to build a future together. As we moved forward, our focus shifted from the wounds of the past to the possibilities of the future. We set new goals and dreams, aligning them with our renewed understanding of each other. By embracing our journey together, we were able to transform our struggles into a shared strength, fortifying our bond and ensuring that we were ready to face whatever came next, side by side. Thanks for tuning in to today's Reddit story. If you enjoyed it, please give this video a thumbs up and share it with your friends. And if you haven't already, make sure to hit that subscribe button and ring the bell so you never miss out on more amazing stories. See you next time.